Hi guys, how are you all doing? Making this video has been a bit of a roller coaster, and not in a good way. And a lot of it has very little to do with the actual gameplay of Elden Ring, but we'll get to that. This is still all focused around Elden Ring gameplay, but again, we'll get to that. So if I ever say anything about future plans in regards to what I intend to do with a build at the end of a video, 75% of the time, that's a lie. My Royal Envoy build is no exception. After many invasions with it, I kind of just realized that I wasn't having fun with it at all. As you guys know, having passive poise was kind of a letdown. I wasn't having as much fun as I thought I would with the Envoy Longhorn, and I think a large part of it is that this build just doesn't do very good damage at rune level 63. The stats in general are all too spread out. So the logical thing to do would be to level up my damage stat and my health and take it somewhere around rune level 77, rune level 80, maybe even 90, right? Right? That is the logical thing to do. That's not what I did at all. Instead, I threw the whole thing in the trash and created something far more sinister than goofy. Much more of a fucked up little guy rather than a giant baby build. Instead, I created a Bloodstar worshipper. And if you don't know what the Bloodstar is, well, educate your ignorant self with this V-limit video. In my last couple of videos, especially that poise video, I've been lamenting poise and how it's just kind of a mechanic that forgives mistakes in melee combat. And for that same period of time, I've also been complaining about how I don't love how high the damage is across the board in this game, and how it's also really not fun to get hit for 3/4 of your health just obliterated by an attack that came from off your screen. So my solution to this is a simple slogan: become a mage, don't engage. Simply just stop getting in between two players, one of which will delete your entire save file with a single jumping attack with power stance weapons. Just don't do it anymore. In a game without frame advantage, why are we insisting on getting up close and personal to our opponents? So as a mage, keep everything in front of you, cast your spells to engage at a distance, and make your enemies come to you. Then, punish their aggression either through the weapons in your main hand, or with specific spells designed to win trades or punish roll-ins. That spell for me is Briars of Sin. Most people have never seen this spell in their life, and thus tend to die to it because it's a 3-cast combo that generally does a lot of damage, can bleed your opponents out, and has deceptive range. It has awful recovery time though, so do not whiff on this spell or cast it while in the presence of a mage, because you'll just get bonked or blasted for it. One of the early complaints about Elden Ring, especially from some of the DS3 lifers that I know, was that Ashes of War just feel like better versions of spells. And good. Use that. Use these better versions of spells in junction with other actual spells in your offhand. That's essentially what I'm doing here with Flaming Strike on the Morningstar. Oh, I know, Flaming Strike, so off meta, but bear with me here. I'm using a hammer, and hammers in this game are not great. Though the Morningstar does have a fantastic running R2 that I use quite a bit in this video. But everything surrounding my Flaming Strike Morningstar is the shutdown passive poise. Flaming Strike shuts down everyone. I don't know how much poise damage it does, but it seems to do enough to stop any and all bloodthirsty, brain dead, and poised up summons. The wide range and lingering hitbox on Flaming Strike ensures that your opponents will at least be stopped in their tracks for a second. And hey, the follow-up hits for quite a bit of damage and buffs your weapon with fire if they really want to stand there and get hit by a flaming mace. So yeah, Flaming Strike is basically like having O Flame, but with a quicker cast time and higher poise damage, and a follow-up strike if you want. Hammers in general have really good poise damage too, so your running R2s and regular R1s will also break the poise of most armor sets in the game. And of course, what better way to worship the Bloodstar than to carry a physical tribute to it? A Flame Art infused Morningstar is a flaming ball of spikes that inflicts bleed. It is thematically the best possible weapon I could use for this build, and I'm thrilled about it. So now that I've talked in depth about the one actual physical weapon I'm using for this build, let's talk about what the hell a Bloodstar Worshipper does. Well, obviously I'm going to use the Briar sorceries, but you can't make a whole build out of 2 sorceries in the game, right? The Briar spells in general all require faith, so that's what this build is going to be. With Marith's Sorcial, I can hit 40 faith, 14 intelligence, and 17 arcane. And that's a bit of a weird stat split, but I'll explain that. With 14 intelligence, I can cast Carrion Slicer, Glint Blade, and Glintstone Stars, all of which are great spells at any level that you want to cast them. And then with 17 Arcane, I can cast any and all Blood or Dragon incantations, and I'm getting pretty good damage from everything because I have 40 Faith. Sadly, the Dragon incantations were just kind of a bust for me. There's nothing that stylish about just filling a room with damage and killing your non-vigor leveling opponents. I can't make any real content with that. Like, what am I supposed to do with all that? Nothing. It's useless. What's the point? I did consider using Grail's Roar, but I already have several roll and punish spells that don't cost all of my FP when I cast them. I do, however, want to give Dragonclaw a try, potentially, just because it looks like a worse but weirder version of Gavel of Haima. But let's talk about the spells I actually can cast, shall we? The way I set up my spells is I sort them into a series of casts that try to set up combos, and then I sort those by what catalyst I'm using. I have sorceries for the first half of my spell queue, because I'm going to be using Carrion Slicer and Swift Glintstone Shard to put people away. And then the back end are incantations, because the way I'm using them on this build is for slower spells that can turn into big burst damage like exploding fireballs or bleed spells. So my original idea for a combo was to use 2 Glint Blades into Briars of Punishment. The thought being that my opponent would be focused on the Glint Blades and then get caught by the Briars trying to run away from them. Sadly, Briars of Punishment has wildly bad tracking, to the point where if your opponent is sprinting or even just moving at a normal pace, there's no way that spell's going to hit them at all. That's not to say that Briars of Punishment doesn't have its uses. It has some very unique properties, like just flat out ignoring height differences in terrain. However, that seems to be better for sniping unsuspecting opponents rather than hitting moving targets. What I found instead to be a much better combo is 2 Glint Blades into Charged Glintstone Stars. It's just too many moving blue projectiles for most hosts to handle moving towards them all at once with different tracking speeds. It doesn't do the best damage, but it does provide some general harassment that usually hits. As for incantations, obviously there's Catch Flame, which works well as a complement to Flaming Strike, although I'm thinking in the future that I might want to try O-Flame instead. We'll see. Next on the lineup I have my Blood spells, Swarm of Bees, and Blood Boon. These are very fun to throw out without any intention of doing anything other than some general harassment. It's my way of kind of inviting people to engage with spells that don't feel that dangerous. But by then I've already built up some bleed, and now I'm smacking them upside the head with a stick adorned with spikes, which can lead to some very nasty burst damage. I went back and forth on my last spell slot because I really liked Uncharged Giant's Flame Take Thee, but ultimately went to Flame Fall Upon Them. Giant's Flame Take Thee is super fun, even outside of the usual YouTube short patented highlight clips of people landing a fully charged, fully buffed Giant's Flame Take Thee from across the entire map. I find it really fun to just throw that spell out uncharged, because while it does fairly decent damage for me, the best property is that it knocks down. Sadly, it does take up 2 spell slots and is a bit overused. And since I'm running a build that uses Carrion Slicer, Catch Flame, and Flaming Strike, maybe I don't need another spell that absolutely everyone else uses. So I switched to Flame Fall Upon Them because it works as a decent mid-range crowd control spell. And at a closer range, it can do the same kind of damage that I was doing with Take Thee if 2 or 3 of those fireballs land. And if I really need damage from a fireball, I have Giant's Flame pots that hit like a goddamn truck. Because of course it does. All pots in this game hit hard, and I hit even harder with 40 Faith and the flame boosting Physic tier. So I had this build for about 2 weeks, and I was just having an absolute blast with it. It's one of those things where once you get comfortable with a casting playstyle, it feels like you can really control how your opponent moves in relation to you. It's also one of those things where I feel like a lot of players bounce off of the casting playstyle initially because it takes you quite a while to adjust to controlling space and pressure with spells that you have to queue up on a scrolling bar. But once you get used to your spell rotations, things start to click. It might take a couple of days, it might take a week, but nailing down your spell rotation feels phenomenal, and it really opened my eyes to the possibilities of just how fun this game can be when you really use all of the tools at your disposal. It's like a Matrix he's beginning to believe moment, except hopefully I don't make several god-awful sequels to this video. So for this build, the spell rotation is all about where players are in relation to you. They're getting too close, Flaming Strike. Keeping their distance, Glint Blade, Charge Glintstone Stars. Keeping your distance and not really paying attention, Briars of Punishment. Still getting too close, Flaming Strike into follow-up R2, and boom, now my weapon's on fire, and I'm chasing you with running R2s and Carrion Slicer. Alright, remember at the beginning of the video when I said that making this video was a roller coaster to make? Well, we're at the peak, and we're about to plummet. In this invasion, I'm finally feeling like I'm putting it all together with this last fight against this pirate host here, and I'm having a blast, up until we get a 2-minute disconnect. Hey, that's unfortunate, but this host is using the Taunter's Tongue and looking to host, so I'll get back in there. I get back in, I'm having a fun fight with this host, and then my whole PC crashes. Not just the game itself, the whole PC. I boot back up, my save files are big time borked, like I can't even delete them off my PC because they're super corrupted. And my last backup was a month ago, before I even made the Royal Envoy build. So, it might be a little bit of time before my next video. I gotta recreate this build because I love it, or I might make some new ones. But obviously this was quite deflating. I'm mostly sad because I really loved this build. I liked my Briar's build and just wanted to do more invasions with my fucked up little guy here, casting some spells. But oh well, these things happen. So no build promises here, no promises on like when I'm going to get a new video out. Instead, I'm going to take the time to direct you to other cool lore channels that I've been watching as of late. I remember when the game came out, I beat the game and was just kind of like, okay, what? Like, yeah, I understood some of the stuff, like the history of Karya, or what went down in Caelid, or Vike's whole tale, sure. But I had zero fucking clue what was going on with the Crucible, or the various fire-worshipping cults, or even the Radagon and Marika conjoining. And I was hoping that the big lore people, like Vadi, would tell us what the fuck was happening here. But so far I found a lot of the most popular lore videos out there either lacking in real answers, or covering topics that I found to be fairly apparent. But one of the people that Vadi has consistently shouted out from the beginning of his Elden Ring content was Quelaag. And her videos have been, I guess, legitimately enlightening. I'm not even kidding you. Every time I would discuss Elden Ring's lore with people on my Discord, we would then conclude, this game is just lore salad, which really means that it's a game that's filled with a bunch of cool shit, but none of it really fits together. But Quelaag's videos have totally reframed Elden Ring through the lens of alchemy, architecture, and history. And all of her videos are these goofy lectures where she explains all of this to you on this giant Prezi board with a little dancing alien guy. She's like the cool professor at your university whose classes you couldn't get into, but now you can watch all of her lectures because they've been webcasted. Seriously, check it out. It's not like prepare to cry shit, but it takes all of the themes and contextualizes them and makes them make sense. I could not recommend this channel more. I'd highly recommend starting with this video about metals and how metals conducting electricity are the central theme of everything to do with the main plot of Elden Ring. A topic in which I had no idea was even a thing until I watched this video, and it ties everything together. The other person you need to check out is Vehement. I linked their Bloodstar video earlier, but the rest of their videos also tend to cover much more niche topics that deserve far more coverage. One of my favorite videos of theirs is the one on the eclipse, so check that out as well. I think every single video I've watched of theirs contains some sort of link or some small detail that I had missed that always ties their theories together in a way that I'm like, oh yeah, no, that's exactly what happened. And in general, I find myself very rarely disagreeing with any of Velimit's theories on what happened. So yeah guys, I'm going to continue to work on builds, I hope. And until then, thanks for watching guys, and I'll see you in the next one.